In 2021, an announcement made by the Starscape development team detailed the return of Player Station's development with a new iteration. While many players such as myself were excited for this return, however, once the video demonstration came out, there was a significant amount of problems that were shown with the mechanic, not to mention the serious letdown it was for the player factions. While there is no official word whether or not this iteration will go on, I think it will be appropriate to thoroughly kill this idea so that it will never see the light of day again. So in this video, we'll talk about the massive downsides of classical Player Station Tycoons. So what are Player Station Tycoons? These are a version of Player Stations meant to be solely focused on solo players rather than faction or group oriented like previous iterations. This was a part of the Accelerator program in 2021 endorsed by Roblox themselves to boost a space MMO game to the platform. It will act as a permanent form of progression akin to the skills we already have present in the game, as well as a concept if player stations were to be implemented. It will serve as finally releasing supposedly the best form of video game content in Starscape's development that players have been asking for since 2020. Although as we go on, we will see that this iteration has got to be the biggest failure at endgame content in Roblox development history. So how does this work? Well, what you would do is definitely, absolutely not in relation to Clash of Clans. See, what you would do is buy a core module for a cheap price, pick a spot separate from the warp hub in the system, only in Wild, similar to how we have Aberrations. So how does this work? Well, what you would do is definitely, absolutely not in relation with Clash of Clans. See, what you would do is buy a core module for a cheap price on the market and pick a spot separate from a warp hub in a wild system similar to Aberrations. Once you build it, you can add modules, upgrade them for better efficiency and effectiveness. You can also hire people to operate modules as a production multiplier for your modules. It would be remiss to not account for the benefits to the player the system has. It gives them a home in Wild, which provides them a way to properly live in the most dangerous security level in the game. From this home in Wild, they can refine ores and produce starships to amplify this experience. This makes mining and drone hunting easier as you can do whatever you need to do in Wild alone and won't have to go back to Unsecure for refining or manufacturing. And this is when the mechanic starts to fail as a viable progression stream when you include NPCs to operate modules as they have their own wants and needs. Starscape should stick to being a space MMO and not a city builder because these are two entirely different game concepts, especially when the city builder requires solo management. Having to do something like this requires a whole gameplay loop in and of itself that players are not going to be keen having to manage 24/7. It's essentially giving players menial management work that leads to no real new content, rather than just using the general mechanic that already exists in other games. It doesn't provide true ending game content when all you made is a progression stream that you just leave on the back burner. This leads us to the next problem, which is solo players that strangely congregate themselves and their stations around certain systems and gank anyone close to them. I'm of course talking about player factions who wants to use the system for solo players like Player Station Tycoons for a group-oriented purpose. This abuse of a system would disadvantage players who are completely oblivious that the next system they warp to is TBB stand, where there's 5 warp bubbles and 10 destroyers waiting side for a formal greeting. This is especially terrible for beacon hunters as they have to navigate through several station clusters to get to their desired system, only to then have another friendly greeting party from the neighbors. This is why I'm against having player stations in WoW for this exact reason. This will make beacons lose a lot of value and ruin the best puzzle game I personally have seen on Roblox. So what are solutions? Obviously, we would prevent player stations from being built in WoW so that beacons aren't gutted of their value. But what about the tycoons? Well, my friend, the oldest solution in the book is the best solution in the book. The very first iteration of player stations. These are unabashedly meant for players to work together for a common goal or which players contracting off the work. These are meant to be built as forward operating bases to take down other stations. By this, it provides the perfect endgame loop where the goal at the end is for players to destroy other player stations and wage wars against others. This is much better than the player tycoon where the point and the end game point of it is just nothing. Yeah, sure, you build up the whole station, got all max modules. Now what? Exactly, it's nothing. But Sparky may ask, wouldn't they cause giant battles that the server couldn't handle? Well, as of this time they were recording, Kev had made massive performance boosts in the PTS, the public testing server, allowing 150 plus players and destroyers in a single server and not crash. And that's when they were fighting. It's really fun. On the more technical side, the reason why there were still crashes even from that PTS was because that it was false positive of client crashes, which wasn't really happening. But what about the 1,000 player battles as well? Sure, you can't handle way past that. And this is where the doctrine of wide battles over tall battles take place. As the first phase of rolling out different sizes of player stations, let's first start with the smallest station that I estimate will be priced at around 1 to 3 million to build. This would make defending the station not worth it above a certain amount of warships needed, along with a limited storage space to ensure the defenders are dissuaded from fleet blobbing a tiny station. So what this means is if you have a tiny station and you were trying to attack it, you wouldn't send like 50 ships to defend that one tiny little station, because in the end of the day, you're gonna be defending you'll be losing like 25 ships worth like triple that of the station. So it'll be like you lose money, but at least you have your station. So it's, okay, you just lost money at that point. I think I'm gonna stop there. But Sparky may ask, wouldn't they cause giant battles that the server couldn't handle? As of the time of this recording, Kev has made massive performance boosts in the PTS public testing server, allowing 150 plus players in destroyers in a single server, fighting each other and not crashing. That's a big gain right there. On the technical side, the reason why there was still crashes is from false positives with detecting client crashes that wasn't really happening. But Sparky, what about the 1,000 plus player battles? Surely the game cannot handle this. And this is where the doctrine of wide battles over tall battles takes place. As a first phase of rolling out different sizes of player stations, let's first start with a small station priced around 1 to 3 million to build. This will make defending the station not worth it above a certain amount of warships needed, along with limited storage space to ensure that defenders are dissuaded from fleet blobbing at a tiny station. And for attackers, they will have to get through a short vulnerability timers that will be present on tiny stations. Vulnerability timers are made so that attackers can only siege stations during certain periods of time decided by the defender, and those windows are short so that if there was a fleet blob present, they will have to split their forces in order to deal a maximum amount of damage for the day. Or else the vulnerability is just gonna come back on. It's gonna be a while for that to come back down. This also makes it so that factions can attack enemy players' station while the enemy is entirely asleep. And so what this system would do is that you will have like a very small battle happening at a very tiny station, but the point is that it's spread across a lot of stations. So you can have like 100 players at 10 stations rather than 100 players at one station, so that you have easier server load. This variation of stations will hold. I don't want to get too deep into larger stations since that goes outside the scope of this video, but I would like to discuss the stations of scale when applied to larger stations. With larger stations, that would scale according to expected level of combat one would expect from an offensive or defensive engagement. At the highest amount of players we could expect, the largest player station should be about as valuable as a faction would be willing to send 60 warships to defend the station based purely on economic measure. Couple that with 80 warships attacking the station, and you will have a roof of how big stations should get according to the server load it could experience. I should note that these stations are purely hypothetical. I should note that these numbers are purely hypothetical because these numbers can change based on whatever black magic Kev can cook up that can make the toaster run 300 destroyer battles on Roblox. I don't know what will happen in the future. After all that is covered, this shows that Station Tycoons are a mess of an idea, that the original design of PlayStation works, and wait. After all that is covered, this shows that Station Tycoons are a mess of an idea, and that the original design of PlayStation works really well. If you want to start a long form discussion with me, then the place to do so will be in the Discord, either in general at Spacey Basebar, link in the description, or in Alpha of the official Starscape Discord if you're an Alpha player. Thanks for watching.